He ruled with all his power. He ruled the street and enforced his dominance. He enforced his dominance everywhere, but no one was there that
Queen, a queen in May hemed pants. He hemed pants, and they were comfortable. They had pockets, and zip-ups and ankle pockets. A watchmaker made watches of all kinds. His favorite was a silver watch. The watcher would help with merchandise, but not tell time. The queen one day asked the watchmaker if she could have a golden watch, and a pink fat tall pig said yes. And the next day she had a new watch, golden, with diamonds studded. It told time, this one, by the mysterious mice visitors, that entered her chamber at night when she slept, and she left it in its box, a wooden box with her name, Elise. Queen Elise the second day said, "Thank you for this new addition to my golden watch, with the ability to tell time." Elise told the watchmaker Pig Hen, but the maker said he could never do such a thing. The next day the mice visited her again, but they climbed onto her bed, and went to her opening, with Queen Elise's face exposed, and a little hole in the door's corner. They all told her surprise and wake up, and Queen Elise did, and was glad and anticipated when hearing and seeing them, and was astounded at their small size, and childlike appearance. So the three told Elise that they fixed her watch with their powers, because great evil man in her town was planning on destroying the sun, and freezing everyone. A display of their powers gave way, to the time the event was to take place. And there was a calendar on her watch with the time 7:30 on February the 2nd, it was still October. And they explained to Elise that she was to look for a young female sorcerer named Ardov. And the mice with weights uplifted, and sighing out loud greatly have the queen their location. And they all took her to their home through their magic hole. And she was transformed to her inner animal a ladybug. And she rode on the chubby mouse's back and took her to their home. They had alchemy products, cheeses, milk jugs, fruit and lots of pizza. They had hundreds of bed.
Took her shirt off and was about 7 and the man 30. And he imploded in her, and she felt a shotgun shell in her head and fell on the floor and died, and authorities went to go check on what had happened, but no one was there. And they buried her without her family's notice, and no one heard of her since. The end. Christmas. On Christmas one day a baby was born and gave the whole room a screech of madness. And they all began singing crazily and worshipping the child. And the child was killed by the energy released, and the room that was there and all of its guests killed themselves with knives they had at hand and slit their throats. The end. Thanksgivings. On Thanksgiving, a holiday where people would come together to eat with their loved ones, lived a dragon that wanted to mate with the local women. He saw one woman walk in one day in the street away from the populace, and he flew to her and took her by his mouth and took her to his cave, and she was raped in every way by the dragon and eaten, and he said Happy Thanksgiving and ate her. The end. Easter. On Easter, when children go find eggs filled with chocolate in their backyards hidden by a giant cat with a hat with red and white stripes, a black and white cat with a knife, lived two children green. They were celebrating Easter one day, and saw the giant cat that's black and white staring at them, and laughing, and they went to see why and ran. And he disappeared. And so did everyone else. And they discovered they three were the only ones to ever had existed, and they killed themselves by drowning in a pond near their house. The end. The mechanic. On a busy street lived a mechanic that was old and frail. A traveler entered his shop and asked for some soda, and he gave it to him. And it entered a young girl with a spacecraft behind her with her dog and the wind behind her. And she was abducting people, like the child previously, and she had a friend, a girl that looked like her. And they both grabbed the man and young boy, and they were very strong, and abducted them, and took them in their ship and crashed it into a dark harbor, and no one heard of the two again, though rumors transpired that they were still around. Mortal Kombat. In a village in Asia, lived a Sub-Zero wielder of ice named Sub-Zero. He and his friends defended their village from bad people, bandits, criminals, prisoners, soldiers, animals, goblins, werewolves, mummies on the loose, serial killers, mutants, like with animals and fish and tree and rocks. They simply used their martial arts, and Sub led them with his ice powers, and together they brought down their adversaries, and defended their village from undesirables. One day a man came to the village named Scorpion, who had power over fire. He could raise fire with his bare hands and throw it at people he wanted. He alone took down villages, mutants, and anything of which he wanted. So he was very underestimated and a surprise to anyone and all he had slain, so far at least. When Scorpion had arrived to the village, he saw Sub-Zero and his men standing near a tent where Sub-Zero was training his men on how to fight and pull limbs with their great strength, and do locks with their bodies to take the air from their opponents, and many other fighting techniques. So Scorpion tried walking past, but one trainer accidentally bumped into him and Scorpion grew mad and punched him in the head and ran away. So they laughed it off and ignored him. Sub-Zero, while the trainee got mad. Scorpion, on the other hand, walked into a bar and drank heavily and grew hungry.
They had alchemy products, cheeses.
Sick about the people he cared about, his wife, daughter Amelia, dog, and dad Puncha.
They had alchemy products, cheeses, milk jugs, fruit, and lots of pizza. They had hundreds of beds and a pet dog that shined with a golden coat. The dog could speak too, and speak different languages. And they all lived there, trying to forget about traveling to the sorcerer Ardav, and stopping her great sorcery. So a great bird, with different colored feathers, and a fire in its tail tip gave a great cry one day outside, and travelers passed by, going about their daily lives. And the sun set a good shine, and the sea moved slowly with the sun's last reflection, and when it was time for the queen and her mice soldiers to stop the sorcerer Ardav from casting her spells from her great cot, she caused time to stop, and the mice were safe, and dog from the time lapse, due to their small sizes, and the Queen Elise, but the town folk were all frozen. And they used their alchemy to stop Ardav in a secret hole through her drainage, that went up to her window, and they saw women, sitting down reading a book, that said distilled spells, others on cross-dimensional travel, and crossing forms, with animals and the environment. The group stared and told her she was to be frozen, and she was. And they told her she was startling them too often and they were to have her stuck in that form for the rest of her life, but she began cursing them often. And the group decided to make her bread and used her spell book to leave her across her street in the road. And time returned, when they found a spell in her book that would return time to normal, and a group of ducks from the lake ate her breaded body, about 5 inches in length altogether. And the Queen Elise, and mice, even the dog returned to the castle, and Ardav's spell book contained many spell pages that caused the environment to enlighten the rooms, and furnitures, and Queen Elise used this to her castle's chambers, and the mice as well, and the hole in the Queen's chambers became a room that led to the...
And they would drop their fire and ice on Reptile and leave him dazed while the trainees held him down with their locks and techniques. So Sub-Zero and Scorpion did as they thought was right and lit a huge fire, and Sub-Zero made Ice Glacier great. And they dropped it down as Reptile was surrounded, and the group did their part, and Reptile was crushed by the glacier and burned much, and the group subdued him, and he had tough skin, so he survived the burning but was very charred, and they tied him up so he couldn't use his strength with iron and to keep his hands from moving and his mouth with ice to prevent him from burning anything or anyone. And they all agreed to kill him there and then because he was very evil and it was in his nature to be evil and crazed. And they all disposed of his remains. They killed him by fire to his eyes by the great Scorpion, now known all over the land for slaying the beast completely, and so were the others. At the end of the day, when Sub-Zero had finished his speech to the village, and they went back to peace and civility, Scorpion said his goodbyes and headed back home. And he told his dad how he had slowed the famous Reptile and brought back his tail for evidence. And his father was proud and invited him back home. He told his daughter, and eventually Scorpion stopped drinking alcohol. And they all lived happily ever after and carried on with their lives. Though Reptile's clan was furious when they learned the news, and they sent out their group to Terio's Scorpions and Sub-Zero's villages, for they had grown famous. Now, and word of them spread all over. So one night when Scorpion was sleeping, he awoke and heard a scream, a young woman it was. And he ran outside and saw his daughter dead on the floor, burned to shards. And the reptiles saw Scorpion and prepared to fight him. So they fired smoke and rocks from their mouths at Scorpion, but he jumped high in the air and let out a huge flame 10 feet high and wide and burned the trio of reptiles, and they survived due to their thick skin. and they laughed and rushed Scorpion falling down. And they held him, and continued hitting him and torturing him. And the villagers left and ran, while his dad hid in the house watching, hoping he would break out. So Scorpion grew mad, but he died and his soul left his body and he was sent to a place called Inferno, where he would rule a pond made of smoke rocks and fire, and torment the evil there, resembling a zombie-like man, clad in fire rocks and with smoke around him. He was highly esteemed by the dead there, and the gods of the underworld there, and they gave him power to torment the souls of the living and dead on their earth as he pleased. So he went to the reptile that had killed his daughter, and they had killed his dad, wife, and dog and burned his house down. So Scorpion stayed and became enraged. He only loved his return and retirement from drinking a few months, and now he was back as an avenging spirit to torment the world. So he found the reptiles with his new acquired powers, and took their souls from their bodies and threw them in his rocks and smokes, and they remained stuck underground, living down there in Inferno. And Scorpion grew mad because he couldn't go to where the good people were kept in the place above, ruled by the gods, where they are visible, and where his family was. So he remained where he was to stay, and stayed, and lived enraged the rest of his life and forever. On the other hand, Sub-Zero learned what had happened and made sure to guard his village with all he could, and he made a new special armor that was fireproof, and used it just in case an emergency would transpire with the reptiles. And one day they did show up, but Scorpion had knew they would show up, so he appeared in front of the 6 reptiles that were ready to avenge the famous reptile, and Scorpion drew much fire from the sky about 100 yards full, and dropped it on the reptiles, but they remained due to their tough skin, and Sub-Zero froze the fire and the snow had enveloped around them. A beautiful dark scenery of their present situation. And Scorpion left because he had done all he would do to them. He wouldn't pull their souls out yet. He wanted to see what Sub-Zero would do, and hoped he would die and lead him to his family who were lost. To him, Sub-Zero was outraged when he had left and saw that he was different and saw what he was getting at, and he made himself ice and beat the reptiles to death, avoiding flame, by his genius and quick wit. And they were beat to death. And Scorpion remained the watcher of Sub-Zero's soul for the remainder of his life, hoping he would die and show him his family in a great fight that would cost him everything like he fell. And they continue to do this to this day. The end. What is saved to her, saved to her. Fire mixed with ice is distant and not the same, making her saved, keeping it at bay. That will never coexist, and this is their differences no matter how dark it may be. She is saved by Pratical, and by this written stoic archaic separation of personalities, which together would result in Sub-Zero over the cool and lenient one to a dark fiery place like Scorpion. Scorpion would be something that would trap her, a bad dark trap, like one that would cause her to go to hell or something spoken to her.
Geez, but things are newer and better. Newer games. No.
Tomb Raider. In a jungle safari lived old evil sorcery, Houdini. He was an old odd fellow, and an outcast to his people, the people in the jungle, who had settled there. One day a famous explorer named Lara Croft visited this jungle in search for a mysterious relic called the Golden Mask, an ancient relic that would give its possessor lots of riches if sold. So Lara was a famous archaeologist and sought it nonetheless. On her arrival there were townspeople that gave grave warnings on the strange activity of the sorcery that lived near them. And she headed their many warnings, and the warnings of the dangers of the jungle, including animals, plants, and sicknesses. So she proceeded with caution and continued venturing. Lara ventured into a dark cave and set up her camp, sack, and made a stay for the night. Suddenly she woke in the middle of the night and heard gunfire and the villagers in the jungle screaming. She peered out of the cave toward the village where the villagers stayed and saw smoke rising from the sky. She knew a group of mercenaries must have been after the artifact she was after too had learned of the Golden Mask location. And she grabbed her handgun, flashlight, and first aid kit for mobile, and headed out, sneaking under the bushes. She was clothed with a long blue sweater and brown pants. She left the rest of her belongings in her camp in the cave and proceeded heading out. As Laura walked along the bushes, in the shadows of the jungle, she witnessed a local warlord talking to his men, telling them to torture the locals and burn down the jungle until they found the golden mask. Laura analyzed her situation and headed back to camp and forged materials. She wasn't going to leave the jungle without a fight. So Laura salvaged some wood, made a table, and started crafting arrows and a bow with the materials she had at hand. She used her knife and some poisonous plants, strings she tore, and used wood as a point. Laura Croft was ready. She climbed a tree near the village where she first stayed and stayed in the cover of the dark. She saw two mercenaries watching a vehicle they had arrived in, and saw that the rest of the warlord's men had gone out to their duties. And Laura aimed her poison bow at the two henchmen, first on the right, and practiced in quiet for several minutes to transition to the one on the left, so she wouldn't make any noise or get fired upon. So she aimed her poison bow and hit one henchman in the left leg. The other was outraged and screamed who did that, and called for backup. Laura nearly slipped off the tree and remained high, away from their sight. She waited, and after a few minutes no one had arrived yet. And she pulled out her handgun and began to open fire on the henchman. And he was killed. And Laura went down, and took the men's weapons and vehicle and continued exploring the jungle. She took their clothes, hid her ponytail, and hid her face with a scarf so she would fit in with the rest of them. All that remained was her light skin, so she bought her look and headed out. While on the road she saw much commotion of the villagers, locals, doctors and children of the village and continued heading out. There were many guards, for she knew that the mask promise of riches had attracted their attention. Laura knew she was outgunned and out of ideas, so she followed what the guards were doing, and they were holding the villages in a hunt away, and the others that scurried out were nowhere to be found. So Laura got out of the vehicle, and got ready for a guerrilla war. She counted 30 men in the local village, and knew that there would be less out, so she out her rifle on semi, and got ready to pick them apart. Laura painted her face with the mud, and sticked to the shadows, using the jungle's darkness that night to her advantage. She followed a foot trail, and continued going the most logical way along the path she believed they would go. As she followed, she witnessed a group of 10 men questioning the local sorcery on the Golden Mask location, and he had it in his possession and pulled it out from his side. They laughed and gave the location of their boss, 2 miles west. So Laura put her rifle on automatic, safety off, and opened fire on them all, including the old man's sorcery. And they all 11 were killed, and she took the Golden Mask and left the warlord. Laura wanted to liberate the village, so she returned back to the village, after drinking some water from a mud puddle that she heated up with some fire she had gathered. So Laura proceeded to the village and went back to gather the men's ammo, and made some weapon adjustments and picked up a silencer. She was excited that she wouldn't get caught, and decided to leave the guards in the village for last, and went west for 2 miles until she stumbled upon the warlord arguing with some villagers on the Golden Mask location which she had now. He had 4 guards, each with miniguns and wheel armored, and Laura knew it would take more than a mission gun to take them out. So she simply went for the warlord and aimed her gun at him and his head, and pulled her trigger, and the men with the guns began shooting wildly at the villagers, and in the bushes and trees. And luckily a local leopard came out of the bushes and jumped at one of the guards and kept biting him. Laura took this opportunity to rush one of the guardsmen and took off his mask and shot him with her pistol. The same with the other, and they didn't notice because they were too distracted by the huge leopard. Laura shot the leopard too, reloaded, and saw the wounded and shocked guardsman, and removed his mask fully, and began interrogating him. He gave up the location to their main hideout, and told her their motives and how they're well-funded, and on a search around the globe for special artifacts like her, but are responsible for drugs, slaves, prostitution, and political corruption in many places. So she remembered what he had said, and took a minigun and blasted the wounded guardsman, head and all. And Laura grew tired, and met up with a few villagers, and they thanked her for saving them, and fed her, and allowed her to stay the rest of the night there. When Laura awoke well rested, she was greatly sore and could hardly move. She let a few days pass, until she was strong enough to head back out, and she knew no reinforcements would come, because she took their one of less cars, and they wouldn't leave until they had acquired the Golden Mask. which was worth a lot of money. So Laura used her first aid kit and was ready for a village return. She took only her pistol and arrow and left the assault rifle and miniguns. As Laura made it back to the village with her car that she got back in where she had parked it, she saw the henchmen still there waiting, without reinforcements. And she hid behind the vehicle, aimed her rifle at about 3, and began opening fire. She took 2 out and the other ran behind cover. Later, 10 men came and opened fire at the car. But Laura had snuck around while the man had left and ran in cover, and got a good view of the village's problem. They had blocked the roads, and we're holding the village under siege. So Laura watched and waited back while the guardsmen walked toward the vehicle looking for a kill. And Laura picked up 2 rifles and opened fire at the rest that had not and killed them all. The others had ran into the jungle believing the fire had come from there. Their communication was off, and the men had died in quietness and quickly. And Laura searched the village and saw the villagers, and they joined her and agreed to defend and aid the village without her. And Laura headed out and went back to the airport she had arrived in. She went to the doctors and went home and got ready for another expedition against the mercenary and tyrannical group she had learned about. The name Desperado. The Wolf and the Children. A wolf walked through a town one day and saw through a little window a family, specifically a group of 4 children. Children, ages 5, 6, and 7. They were surrounding a Christmas tree, which wasn't decorated, but they were all cozy on the floor and in their blankets. They loved their nanny, that was watching them form the winter. And their parents, mom and dad, were out of town. And the nanny one night, and this night fell asleep, while the children were still up. And the wolf was hungry and knew the weakest links were defenseless. And so he grew agitated, and broke through their little window, and run his way in. He squeezed through it in a black rush. And the children were too stunned and slow to respond. And he killed the 3 and ate their corpses. And the nanny woke up and walked into the living room where the Christmas tree is and saw the dead, mutilated bodies of the children. And she screamed to the top of her lungs, and the wolf was still in the house, and ran into the living room from sleeping in the kitchen, after dragging the children's meat into the kitchen. And he rushed the nanny, who wasn't looking, and knocked her down, and gnawed her face and throat with his sharp teeth, and he used his claws to wound her too. And the wolf made that house his home, his den, and he laid there all winter. Eventually, when winter came to an end, the children's mom and dad came back home, and they entered and heard the foulest stench of feces, urine, vomit, and fur. They saw the skeletons of their children and the nanny on the floor, still fresh. And they were angry and sad, the 2. And the man searched the house in a hurry and saw the black wolf sleeping in the kitchen curled up. And he knew the wolf killed the 5. So he grabbed a nearby pan and beat the black wolf, and the black wolf ran into the forest, passing the women, and didn't return. And the man wept bitter tears, and the woman prepared a funeral for them. And the house was cleaned. And the authorities heard about it and wrote it in their records. And the house was cleaned. And as the years passed, the man and woman decided to have a family again. And they had 2 sons, ages 4 and 5. They were a happy family again and got a guard dog for their home, to avoid a problem. And as winter arrived, the boys were happy that they would receive gifts. And as they slept waiting for them to receive their gifts, the authorities slammed through their home, and aimed their guns and fired at the boys, and got to the mom and dad, and shot them as well. And the dog was killed as well with a shot to his head. And the bodies were hidden in the woods, and disposed of. And no one in that town ever saw them again. And a black wolf howled in the back at the day of their disappearance in the woods. And no one heard of that family again. white planet. One day a monkey man was walking in the streets and stumbled upon a crater. He looked inside and saw a being with a face and hair, and legs and arms, but no fur. He was greatly alarmed and began to do a common chant. And he took the being and all the city stared at him sulkily. And he took him to the cops, the monkey man cops, and had him imprisoned. He grew up in the prison, with the bad gorillas and giraffes. They punker him and toughened him. He didn't speak their language, and grew far weaker. He drew pictures of the ship he crashed in, and drew pictures of space, and animals, and brings where he came from. He wrote a year one should not forget. 1973, a date in a calendar near a monkey man cop read the year was 2300. And the man saw the sign when passing through the corridor for lunch. And he knew he traveled in the future, and all man had been killed, slain, or imprisoned by the man-apes. And he was worried. Eventually he was sent before a court, and publicly ridiculed by the monkey men, their children.
And the group decided to make her bread and used her spell book to leave her across her street in the road. And time returned, when they found a spell in her book that would return time to normal, and a group of ducks from the lake ate her breaded body, about 5 inches in length altogether. And the Queen Elise, and mice, even the dog returned to the castle, and Art of Spell book contained many spell pages that caused the environment to enlighten the rooms, and furnitures, and Queen Elise used this to her castle's chambers, and the mice as well, and the hole in the Queen's chambers became a room that led to their home, and the walls gained color, and the dog was now visible to all the people in and around the town of Chalop. The following days, the castle and the people were enthralled, feeling as if a jolt of life from their bodies was halted from them, but they returned to normal eventually. The Queen Elise remained a transformer of her normal looking to her ladybug looking, with her now giant and normal mice and dog friend. They flew around Chalop often, and made friends with the other animal inhabitants and people. The end.
Noticed a monkey had left a knife near him, as part of his spear demonstration for him. And he took it by his feet, and brought it to his hand, and continued striking the locks he was tied up to. And he did this every day, and eventually he broke one hand chain, but he didn't break the other one, and the monkey men noticed this difference. And they beat him and held him down with many monkey apes, and chimpanzees, and gorillas, and chained him again. And there the man remained. After decades he was now an old man. And the city's inhabitants knew he would die soon, and they made him a famous hostage spectacle to their people. And eventually the man did die. And this was the last and only documented human to enter and live in their modern world. The world of the apes. And no one knew how the apes came to power, and how they took over and used all the humans' old devices and jobs, vehicles, and laws, politics, military, science, and everything. This was his story.
Summer bummer lumber, stunner, gun her, love hurts. Explain me, explain me. I am me, he is that, she is fat, I like that.
The girl and the giant
Chicken chased her, extra placed her.
lived a giant monster.
See you later.
With his family who were monsters
Hate you,
and
Baker.
animals. They
Your life is
survived
later.
their house. These
Summer
monsters
bummer
were
lumber,
giants,
stunner,
very
gun
tall,
her,
about
love
20
hurts.
feet, and they ate fruits from
Explain me,
together,
explain me.
vegetables, and drank sweet
I am
wine
me,
from a
he
river
is that,
nearby.
she is
They
fat,
celebrated
I like
every
that.
day with great meals.
Chicken chased her, extra placed her.
Eat. So they were
See you
always
later.
happy and always had
Hate you, Baker.
One day, a little girl
Your life is later.
with blonde hair.
I feel great, see your place. End of games, Duel of Gates. Stay this way, love my that's. To my place. Extra mace, stupid waste. Goes this way, had a great mane, the fur. No for these word was redundant, didn't help at all. But now you know. The problem is, stupid worlds. We don't want stupid worlds, so make this peaceful, a nice cartoonish, Animalis home. Houses still good, we'll need it. We make this together, yeah. So this is the black you don't want, and that's the white you want.
told the blonde
How are you going to get this here? Maybe, well maybe, it'll come out fine. Fine, like a way that doesn't cause harm. So this is fine. In the treehouse it's great. Rugs, blankets everywhere. Huge. A lake pond, some grass somewhere. Some buffalo, and deer, a fish area, ocean they call it, a yellowish grass for the wilderness beasts, and a dinosaur area. They eat leaves, in the tall trees and bushes, and tigers are there, and they eat dinosaurs. The ones and rest we don't like get a respawn whoever was wronged. And the animals, I say the group, animals are tortured and drowned, we use their furs and skins as coats. This is a song, a life, let it be. Though written was just a electronic, typer. The same with them all. So now we have this stuff getting ignored when we want to meditate, add recordings and stuff. Whatever we do, life, moves, gambles. Punished bodily, ignoring gambles, still dealing with those issues. And now we have a better place, a place we like, artist's cottage, and works, we crossed typo errors, brain damages, strokes to hell, possessions, W.
Dead monkey lemur and the rest. And eventually they came back centuries later, and that's what happened to them. So they all left, including the dinosaur, and they began to eat and celebrate with the giants, and no man entered the land. The man and
waste, healed.
Destroy them. For them.
Waste, healed, wow, okay. So we have nothing theirs, but she thinks we were frozen. So, we'll travel here, staying here, we find a home. A place we like, but you couldn't write it. So ingot this, when they messed everything up. And now we'll stay here. Part of the ocean masters. The end. Yeah, the real end. More it goes with our dove. Shadow. Pure.
Though she underwent the same thing. And thus this was their tradition on attachment, love, and truth for themselves rather than on others. But after a celebration